Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 15th day of December 2025. We just started looking at Parliament in 2025. The two members of Parliament have given us a self-appraisal which is below expectation, and they have gone ahead to explain some of the situation they found themselves in the House, and you get more from them. I think there can never be a better representation than first-time members of Parliament to do the appraisal, because then you'd expect some level of objectivity. But Caroline, talk to us through the numbers. You've heard what the members are saying, but in terms of bills, the business of the House, what are you looking at? Okay,
first of all, let me start by saying that I totally agree with the sentiments of the members. But I would disagree a bit with Honorable Ote when it comes to, 2025 being better than 2024, especially in terms of public participation. 2025 is when we saw a young activist, being arrested for facilitating public participation. Yeah. So the whole process of the public participation could have been done, could be better from a fair point of view, but it wasn't. It wasn't as responsive as people expected. Secondly, when it came to the finance bill this year, as much as, you could argue the process improved, we saw that that trust, because that trust was broken, even the voting, the way the voting was done was different from last year. And then third, we have seen a new systemic way just to make sure that, the public is hoodwinked, where instead of discussing things in one bill, they're being broken down so that citizens are kept busy going through so many bills. So the finance bill of 2024 was mutilated into different sections, and the Leader majority has been on air saying that, all the issues that citizens complained about came back to the House in bits and pieces, and they were passed. So on that, I beg to differ. Secondly, I do agree that a higher number of bills have been passed this year, and it's true. We've seen, according to our tally, 14.4% increase. But we also see other emerging concerns. So, for example, quite a number of these bills have been passed, have raised contestations, and quite a number of them are in court because either the proper process was not followed, public participation thresholds and timelines were not met. Yep. Then 7 of those bills, so 53 bills have been passed in total, which is a higher number than last year by 14.4%, as I said, and those that have been assented to are 16. But we've seen, of these 16 that have been, submitted to be assented to, we also saw quite a number of, in fact, 7 being sent back by the president. And it was
out of the 16.
Out of this, yeah, sent back to Parliament with concerns about, and this has also raised concerns about executive overreach. In fact, recently, I think it was 2 weeks ago, on the floor of the House, members were raising concern about how quite a number of bills that they have discussed and passed in the House are coming back with a lot of executive comments that really changes the bill in comparatively to what the House passed. So that's another one. Of course, we've seen increased contestations between the National Assembly and the Senate, and currently 7 bills have been submitted for mediation, which means that relationship has not been improved. And then a very high number of bills that are seeking to amend the Constitution, and quite a number of these, again, at odds with what citizens expect. So there's quality versus quantity. There's a question of quality versus quantity. There's a question of constitutionalism. There's a question of, the executive capture that everyone has talked about. And then, of course, the number of the private bills, I think my colleagues have talked about the higher number. We had about 17 private members' bill. Yeah. But the process, of course, priorities to government bills. So those are some of the concerns that I would say we have observed in terms of, yes, legislating, but legislating for who, legislating, the public participation processes, the duration of the bills. And then lastly, let me also just add to the comments about, the speech, the floor of the House, the contributions on the floor of the House. And those are some of the things that, we capture in our scorecard, and I started by putting a disclaimer that this year we didn't do it because we've seen the trend shift from quality discussions on the floor of the House to, you know, concerns about just the number of people. And so this year we said, look, if we do this, it's very likely that you are looking at a very small segment of members who speak in the House, and which would mean the report does not portray the reality on the ground. And so we need, and we've done studies in the past, especially when it comes to young members and first-time members, about the opportunities for speaking. But in this one, it's worse. So we've not done that. In terms of gender and youth contributions, I think we've seen an increase in the number of bills that have been proposed by female legislators, but not all of them, of course, have been. I mean, not many of them have been assented to. I think for the Senate, the bill by Senator Christo is what comes to mind very fast. And then, lastly, in terms of the House, the vetting, I think this House has failed Kenyans when it comes to oversight. And in any forum, recently I was at a forum and somebody said that in this House, laws are passing through the House. They come, they are passed. You've seen members on the floor of the House talking about, if you saw one member saying, we have passed all these laws for the president, why is he calling us corrupt? Yep. And this is on the floor of the House. And that's where the rain started beating us, because if you are exercising delegated power and your concern is what the president thinks first and what the executive thinks, and everything that you're doing on the floor of the House is with the president in mind, then you have a problem. And then lastly, I don't think we discussed the politics around handshakes and broad-based enough in terms of how that has contributed to the weakening of Parliament as a House. The members themselves have talked about the non-existent lines between opposition and government business. And increasingly, we are moving away from what is the Constitution envisaged as Kenya being a multi-party democracy. And you're creating this monolith of thinking that is not necessarily defined by one political party, but for all intents and purposes behaves as if...
It's called working together.
Behaves as if it's one political party and one political thinking. So democratization of political parties and the quality of leadership, we could spend a whole morning here just discussing also in terms of the quality of leadership, and we could discuss that more in details, but I do not want to gaslight citizens and say we are the ones who are electing bad leaders. We elect what we are given by political parties. So political parties must really clean up house, and maybe that is something that CMD and all those that are working in political parties should help us do, because that's where the rain again starts beating us.
Before I get you to you, Franklin, Mheshimiwa Karuli, she's talking about the executive overreach, that the president has vetoed bills. But the same constitution allows Parliament to disagree with the president by raising a two-thirds majority. Where does Parliament find itself in at a time that you'll find the president expressing his mind? He'll write a memorandum, then come speak about it in the public fora. And then the House has to bring the numbers to agree with him instead of disagreeing with him, if for sure there's a proper reason why Parliament would have passed a bill in the original format.
Yeah, actually, if you study the origins of that kind of referral system, it started with the monarchies, especially in the UK, when the English started agitating for a parliament where they would make laws and not leave it for the sovereign, the king. And the king and the lords, those who owned the land, and everybody also felt it may be necessary in the interest of the public or the sovereign sometimes to refer something back to the House. So that is the origin. But the problem we have in Kenya under our system is if the president refers a bill with comments, to overrule him, you need two-thirds, which becomes an impossibility. So in other words, the president can actually be legislating. Because when now he goes further, not just to give you comments, this is the problem we are having, just to express a reservation, but comes back with drafted text saying, I would propose this area to be amended this way. And then you don't get the 2/3 to overturn. He becomes the legislator.
But you've been able to raise 2/3 in previous occasions. When you're impeaching the deputy president, when you're passing the constitutional amendment to entrench NGCDF in the constitution, why is it impossible to raise the numbers?
We also get 2/3 when we are talking about our welfare issues. Yes.
So why is it difficult to raise numbers?
You not get, it's difficult because we have members of parliament who've not understood that parliament can also be bipartisan. That there's a moment you can work across the island, across party lines. You remember even when ODM tried to expel us from the party because we had reached out to the president to discuss some issues. I told them, the recourse you have, you cannot expel anybody from parliament. Political parties cannot remove you once you are elected. Only members, your citizens. Yeah, parties have no role. It can't work. The only thing they do in other parliaments, when you disagree with your party, there's something place called crossbench. So you don't caucus with them. You don't sit on their side. You go to the crossbench. In fact, I asked the House to establish a crossbench. Because if there's a crossbench, then most of the independent members of parliament can start coalescing there. So we have our own corner where we sit and we defend public interest, where we are not sycophants, and where we are not just behaving like people without heads who can't think for themselves. So what is happening is, if that referral comes back, that is what the Constitution says. But until members learn that it is within their power to do some things, because we all come from different backgrounds. We have people who don't understand the Constitution. We have people who don't understand Western-style democracy, parliamentary systems, presidential systems.
Right.
So there are many challenges we also have. So when they hear the president has referred something back, okay, the party will whip me or the party will do this. I mean,
they have to comply.
I think, the fact that there is a referral from the president basically tells you that Parliament is independent. Because if Parliament was not, these bills will have been cleared in the floor of the House so that by the time it goes to the president, it will have read the president's mind. The fact that they are able to take something that the president has a different opinion basically tells you that there is an independent discussion in Parliament. But again, it's not the fault of the president to refer it back, because he's exploiting a lacuna in law, which says that we need a 2/3. And the challenge here is, this is a political system where there are political parties. And the political leader is the president. So when your leader, the president, sends back a bill, it is very difficult, if you are believing in the manifesto and the agenda of the president, to defer. So that is the reason why we've been able to raise the 2/3 at the NGCDF. At that point, it is the basic interest of all members, every member at that point. When we were impeaching the deputy president, there was a whipping. But when bills are, who is responsible to whip members for a bill that is referred back? Who? The other one, there was an engine that is whipping members to do that.
Which is?
For the NGCDF, it is the self-survival of your constituents, where you realize that if you do not have this, how do you put up schools? How do you do all this? So, unless also the law, again, the law was made by Kenyans, unless this same law is reduced to levels where we do not require the 2/3, but as long as the 2/3 voting is required to turn back or reject the referral from the president, we will always come and discuss this matter. So somehow the law allowed the president the advantage.
For sure it does allow. I'm just taking keen interest in what you're saying, that the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua, there was a whipping engine. For NGCDF, it's about self-survival of MPs. For bills that the president refers, then it means Parliament is independent. That's what you're saying. So then, how should Kenyans trust Parliament if there has to be an engine or there has to be self-interests?
Well, Kenyans need to trust Parliament because, one, I've said before that by the fact that the president was able to refer bills back to Parliament basically means that there was no interference in the discussions of that bill. That's the first thing they need to trust. Kenyans have done that.
I think you didn't understand my question.
Yes.
You're saying to raise 2/3 because the Constitution provides that you raise 2/3 because there can be a president who is overreaching. Not necessarily William Ruto. There can be one who is abusing power, right? But if Parliament is not able to raise 2/3, then you're not able to do the checks and balances. So my question is, how and why should Kenyans trust Parliament if they're not able to raise numbers when they need to, unless they are whipped or their self-interest involved?
Can we go back to what I said before? I said Kenyans are the ones, the product of the Parliament that we see is the product of Kenyans' elections.
But Kenyans do not sit in Parliament.
I know they do not sit in Parliament, but they elect individual members. For you to raise the 2/3 is a collection, a sum total of all the members that have been sent to Parliament. So if Kenyans send to Parliament members that do not see an importance of a bill, to come and defend a bill that is for the betterment of this country.
But how are they to know if you're good or not, Mheshimiwa Lote?
It is. I've said this. When elections take place, and you know this, we saw PLO Lumumba one time vying for an elective seat, and he said, I'm not going to use money, I'm going to tell people what I can do in Parliament. How many votes did he get? How many votes did he get? And we know this guy can be able to prosecute a matter in Parliament. He can be able to put interest in Parliament. So it is also to the Kenyans. Can you be able to have people that believe in these bills? Not only when it is about self-preservation or self-interest.
Wow, right.
Sam, the straight answer to what you asked, Honorable Lote, is trust is earned. And if he agrees with Honorable Karoli Omondi that this Parliament has performed below expectation, and they are decrying the way the House Business Committee particularly has conducted its leadership business, then the House has not earned trust. And therefore, he cannot demand that Kenyans trust simply because they elected those in position. And I mean, this obtaining political culture that is poor is our societal problem. And partly why we have even quorum issues in the House is one, the morale of many of those because of the way the House is structured. But also, it is a typically Kenyan problem that they would prefer Honorable Karoli Omondi in Suba attending funerals and other social functions and not his legislative and representative and oversight role. And this is something that we have to speak to, that we have a poor political culture as a country, where we look at Honorable Karoli and look at Titus Lote as social welfare dispensers and not representatives and not legislators and not oversight. We go to elections looking for I had at some point a governor was elected based on their nice dimples and looks, and not other things. You know,
nothing wrong with
nothing wrong with having dimples and such. But there were more other credentials that we ought to have looked into for such a position. We elect leaders based on how they have helped us. Whether they are wealthy and most importantly generous enough to continue dispensing this social welfare. And this is the real problem, Sam. And unless we root out that through proper political education and civic engagement, Parliament will continue not doing its job. But that is the cultural aspect of our society which can be worked on. And as much as culture is more stable than the law, the inherent weaknesses of our legislature is down to the political system that we bestowed ourselves. Right. There is nowhere, and Honorable Karoli is a good student of this, there is nowhere in governance systems that you will see a majority, minority, and presidential system with an overly, a very independent legislature. And even if you were to give this presidency to Honorable Karoli Omondi, he will seek to pursue the capture of Parliament as their first work. You recall that President William Ruto, and the court has pronounced itself, is actually a minority. president. If you go to the election results, Azimio is actually the majority party.
Correct.
All right? But the moment you have the presidential victory and you need to run business, even you, Sam, will go for the capture. And in this case, the capture has been more defined in the National Assembly. But it's not helpful when you combine this with the poor political culture that we have. The only time I have seen these members of parliament, whether first-term monos or whatever, uniting seriously is when the president came down on them saying they have made the House, what was it called?
Extortionists.
Extortionists. And that is when they unite to, when you have the interests around CDF, that is when they unite. So you can see that the pursuit of selfish interests by the citizens through a poor political culture is continued in the House. Because when Honorable Ote has to go over the weekend, he begins asking himself many questions. Where am I going to get the money?
Is there a solution to that?
Sorry?
Is there a solution to that?
Yeah.
It's a solution that we need to all first agree that we have a poor political culture as a country, that we must begin to educate our young people. If you look at our education system, Sam, many years ago, Kanu had a school around Kasarani, I think it was named Lumumba.
Lumumba is...
And in the wisdom of Jomo Kenyatta, he soon closed that school of Kanu political education under the guise that Bill and Kagia and Jaramogi were using it to teach some socialism. But socialism is a political ideology, Sam. That possibly we need such initiatives, to ensure that our young people ourselves are very civically woke and stooped in these serious political engagements. Otherwise, having ignorant people electing, and I find an ignorant citizen, Sam, more dangerous than a terrorist. Because look at the decisions that we are making ourselves and sending people to very important institutions that in turn begin not vetting but rewarding other political failures to those institutions that Karoli is saying that they need to be independent. So you have a political failure here who's been vetted by someone who came in with a very awkward criteria, vetting to, and we're capturing our country in a way that is not nice. But finally, Sam, these legislators, and just to read through their way of working. Parliament gives legislators through the Parliamentary Service Commission a budget for their staffing and operations. But I'm inviting you to look into some of the people. And Honorable Karoli says very well that the staff at Parliament themselves, that is hired to support them in Nairobi is very good. But look at just the staffing of the legislators, particularly the elected ones. They have, in fact, I don't think the law limits them quite much because they are given a budget and they're given some restrictions on the minimum wage and all those things for the operations and hiring of staff. But look at the quality of the people that they hire. They also go rewarding, not quality of the staff that will help them identify the critical issues so that they can be able to relay them as representatives. They are very questionable, all right? And that is therein lies a challenge. So how do you then go on the floor prepared as a legislator when you do not have a back room? And when Honorable Karoli compares
Franklin, do you even need to prepare because you may not be given the chance to speak anyway?
You see, that's on the one part. At least prepare and then you're not given a chance and go out there, come on such platforms and express those issues. So we cannot just, where I come from, Sam, we savor the chicken as our delicacy. And we always say that we must be very protective of the vifarangas. And when you have this scenario where the crow has, is easily capturing the vifarangas, we have a saying where I come from that you do not just blame the crow, you also blame the vifarangas for wandering far away to be easily captured. So we can look at it either way, blame the vifarangas and the crow as well.
All right, Franklin. Now, you're talking about people need to hire good advisors for them to prepare. Let's hear. There's a member of parliament who is preparing on how to deal with some future business in the House. Watch this.
watu wanasema ati tusiuze assets. Mimi nakuambia Your Excellency, kama mjumbe wa Thika Mama Simba, uza zote tutengeneze mabarabara. Hata ukiwa kwa nyumba, ukiwa uko na shida, mtu huwa anashika ile ako nayo, anasaidia nyumba yake. Wewe kama rais wa Kenya, ukisikia Safaricom tuuze, tunauza. Ukisema pipeline tuuze, tunauza. Ndio sisi watu wa kutoka Thika, watu wa Ruiru, watu wa Juja, watu wa Gatondo North, ututengeneze expressway, biashara zetu zifunguke.
I wonder what a good advisor would do.
You know, this is the problem, that I don't know whether the legislator, with a lot of respect, understands the issues around privatization. And she can do very well with good advice and some reading, so that she can actually advise her people and get advised, because you cannot milk a stone, Sam. It's just not possible. So this is a scenario that I'm saying, possibly, you surround yourself with better people. And not just the legislator, Sam. The president has gone on record himself,
yep,
after appointing very many public servants to serve him. He actually went on record saying that he is taken aback that he knows more than they do. So it's a cross-cutting challenge.
Caroline.
And right there is actually the challenge of Parliament, because when these same member and other members are then expected to provide that oversight of the sale of assets when these things come to the floor of the House, their mind is already made up. And we've seen this with members expressing concerns about issues of SHA, issues of the finance bill after the fact. They didn't inform themselves of the facts contained, for example, in legislative proposals before, and they get surprised after the bills have been passed when citizens raise concerns. And really, the investing in quality leadership and investing in better technical capacity will perhaps go a long way in helping this. But it can't be done if we don't clean up the system. If you again you put in people without the technical expertise, without the country first mentality, without understanding why they came to the House in the first instance. Because if your intention is to come and make, or recoup your investments, as, Honorable Leto is talking about, Lotte is talking about, yes, Honorable Lotte is talking about, the amount of money members, any political aspirant is putting into the politics, then the whole ecosystem is really biased. And our data, again, confirms some of this. So one of the things, again, we've done as we've been reflecting is just wanting to see whether top performance in Parliament, especially as per Scorecard, translates into re-elections. A lot of times, actually, our data shows it doesn't. And we've had members who've told us their constituents tell them they don't eat laws. And so you find that those that come to the House and want to legislate spend a lot of time doing what we elected them to do, but back home, you're not seen in funerals, you're not seen in weddings, and that translates to bad performance for you. So in terms of citizen education, I think there's a lot of investment that is required. They're not to negate the responsibilities of the members, but I do think we need to balance the equation and make sure that we are educating citizens. And we've been trying to do this on the roles of the different duty, offices.
Right.
But for members of Parliament, again, it doesn't help them because, again, the whole conversation around CDF and development, citizens still then expect that development if they're controlling CDF. So again, where do we draw the lines? Yeah.
And of course, as we continue to talk about this, there's also the reality, Mheshimiwa Karoli Omondi, there appears to be, there's a time slot that is premium time. Initially, it used to be the Prime Minister's question time, but it appears there's something that happens. Is it Wednesday afternoon, or I don't know what particular day it is? But as we do that, let's listen to what the President said about the journey to First World and what role Parliament must play.
Kesho tunapitisha hazina maalum ya National Infrastructure Fund ambaye tutatumia kuokota pesa shilingi trilioni 5 ya kubadilisha hii nchi. And we are not joking. My friends, hii nchi hii lazima ibadilike. Tumechelewa kubadilisha Kenya. Tumechelewa kufukuza umaskini. Tumechelewa kufukuza njaa. Hii nchi inaweza kubadilika. Kama watu wa Singapore walibadilisha kwao, wa Korea walibadilisha kwao, wa Malaysia walibadilisha kwao, sisi tutabadilisha kwetu.
So, Mheshimiwa Karoli, the agenda First World is by President Ruto. During Jamhuri Day celebrations, he spoke about this and he started announcing that Cabinet will consider and approve, again, the product of William Ruto. So a policy will be passed today by Cabinet, and I can almost say certainly will be passed. Thereafter, it may be brought to the House as a bill, especially on the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Parliament is highly likely going to pass it. So then what role does Parliament play in all this process, knowing too well that we appear to be moving with the thoughts of one individual?
No, you see, the president, surely I can't blame the president for painting a vision of where he wants to take Kenya and how he sees it. And I think President Ruto is very good at that. At least he's been bold enough to articulate what his vision is. My problem is he's jumping the gun, as I said in the beginning. The first thing we should do is to institutionalize our values and have a bill in the House on nationhood science. That is what Singapore first did. Lee Kuan Yew first institutionalized the values that he believed would make Singaporeans love their country and work hard and develop it. And those values were then taught from kindergarten all the way to university. So I've brought a bill. It is at the government printer. It has gone through all the processing. Nationhood science. If you don't teach people on one simple thing called meritocracy, which is what built Singapore, then we are wasting time. You can put a fund, you can load it with all the taxes you want, but if people remain committed to stealing, not following rules, not obeying laws, not working for Kenya, seeing things in tribal lenses, those things will never work. Nigeria has tried them, they didn't work. South Africa has tried them, they didn't work, because the value system is lacking. The second thing, you must strengthen institutions. So if you want to deliver the Singaporean dream, you must do two things, as I've said: values and strong institutions, and build them on meritocracy. Lee Kuan Yew made it very clear, if you want to compete at the global stage, you must adopt global standards. There is no shortcut to those things. There is no shortcut, absolutely. So what I agree with the vision, and there's nothing wrong in the president stating that. He can share it, he can motivate us with it, but just putting up a fund because we want to warehouse the proceeds of the sale of Safaricom, which again has a problem, I don't agree with the way they are doing it. Like I didn't agree with the privatization of pipeline. The pipeline, they stopped me from talking about it in Parliament. In fact,
how did they do that?
The speaker at that time happened to be a member of ODM like me. But he came and I didn't know he was going to sit on the chair. So he came and he asked me, what do you want to say about this thing? So I explained to him. When he sat there, he refused to give me a chance to speak.
Wow.
And later he told me, I was not going to allow you. I looked at him and I told him, you know, it is your loss. It's not my loss. It is a loss of the country. My argument was this. For privatizing Kenya Pipeline, you need a strategic investor. Somebody with the knowledge, technical capacity and financial wherewithal to create new streams of business for Kenya Pipeline and to extend the pipeline into southern Ethiopia and northern Uganda and parts of southern Sudan. So to float the shares in Nairobi Stock Exchange, would not yield you the financial resources that you need to develop the pipeline as a transnational business across the borders. On the Safaricom issue, my thinking is completely different. We don't need further flotation in the stock exchange. Strategic sale to existing shareholder. Because we need to democratize the ownership of Safaricom. It's a business that has already been built. And in Kenya, only 1% owns 78% of the financial resources. So with Safaricom, we should actually be selling the shares, most of those shares, to Kenyans. To own them. And apart from that, we should also, actually, if you ask the Minister for Treasury, National Treasury, the first thing they should tell Kenyans on Safaricom is, we did a study and we found this to be the best method of privatization or divestiture. They didn't do a study. That is what our constitution says. Those are the values I'm talking about.
But they
yes.
say...
If you look at Article 232...
They say it's a proposal from Vodacom.
No, Vodafone cannot propose to the government of Kenya what to do with our shares. The National Treasury should have commissioned a study, independent study, and said, these are the options we have. If we do a strategic sale, if we do further divestiture through share flotation, yes, what are the options? What are the costs? What are the merits? How much will the capital... You know, so there's no such study. Somebody somewhere has just woke up, and you know Safaricom has this bad reputation, the original sin of Mobitelea, where shareholding was warehoused for politicians. It is a fact. They can't deny that. They declared it in London Stock Exchange. And they've not even told us what they did with the Mobitelea shares. So if you think about all these issues, then we are not bringing the value system into our Singaporean dream. And without those value systems, we are wasting time. That is what I'm saying. In Singapore, they would have done a study, they would have picked the best and the brightest to advise them, things would have been made public, Lee Kuan Yew would have gone and explained them in town halls. We are not doing that. We are going to rallies, asking people who don't even understand the issues to talk about them. That is not how you build a first-class country. Those are not first-class standards.
And Mheshimiwa Lote, so in a practical sense, for what you've been able to experience so far, what value does your presence in the House add, especially on such conversations like what he's saying? Because consistently and repeatedly we are seeing more members of parliament more vocal outside the House. Some come to this panel and say that they have more time to speak here than they'll ever on the floor of the House.
Well, it is true that members of parliament do not have the same veto power in parliament. We've got what we call the ranking rights in parliament. From the leadership to how many years you've served in parliament, and like that. So sometimes we have very good legislatures, first-timers who do not have any leadership position in parliament, who cannot get enough time to be able to express themselves, despite the fact that they've got the content to be able to express themselves. So I think that is something that needs to be dealt with within parliament. Because if I raise my hand as a first-timer, and a fifth or fourth timer or a leadership person in leadership raises his hand, that is the person that is going to be listened to. It doesn't mean that that person has got more ideas or that person has got better debating prowess than me. So what you're saying, what members come here and say that they get more time here is right. I think that is something that needs to be dealt with within the standing orders of parliament, so that every member, irrespective of their position, you're given time to be able to prosecute your matter. You've actually just had an example from Karoli, where sometimes they even censor what you want to say. So for me, I think that is a parliamentary issue that needs to be resolved within parliament. But to come back to here about the National Infrastructure Fund and that we're going to have our Singaporean dream, for me, I think I agree 100% with the president. And I start this from the premise in Bible, which says that my people perish for lack of vision. The president has set a vision for this country. Whether the vision is going to be realized now, like Moses took the children of Israel to Canaan and never reached themselves, at least the vision was started. And finally, the children of Israel reached Canaan. I think the agenda that the president has set, for me, is something that has never set by somebody. I think we've taken our thought process to be mediocre, so that what we think about is we think about what we are going to eat tomorrow as a country and not what this country is going to be in the future. So as to whether the National Infrastructure Fund is going to unlock this dream or not, for me, I think the premise by the president to say that he is going to transform this country is key, very key. And I want to say to Kenyans, let us look at this person called William Ruto. This is a person that when he was a chicken seller, he actually dreamt of becoming the president. He has the capacity at the individual level. If you can be able to have a capacity at the individual level to transform yourself, then you've got the capacity at the macro level to transform a country. So for me, that I will say, I will support if it comes to the floor of the House. And I think every Kenyan that is thinking...
What will you support?
I will support the institutionalization of the National Infrastructure Fund. I will, because what the president has
highlighted... How will you support? You haven't seen it, have you?
It will definitely come, because today is
You've already taken a position.
I've already taken the position, because when the president said that he's going to use this infrastructure to dual our highways, you actually, unfortunately, the timely death of the former Jirongo, is because the highway is narrow, and nobody has ever thought of this area being expanded. We've actually seen all the infrastructural proposals that you've set for us.
So that's all good.
So
but as you plan to support, is there anything you'll be looking at, a role that you need to make sure as a parliamentarian is safeguarded? Anything?
When the rubber meets the road is when I'm going to be keen in what is
you
this.
have approved.
But I've already agreed with the vision. That is what I'm saying. I have agreed with the vision. If that National Infrastructure Fund is going to do what the president has said, I'll tell you, I will support it. So it's only just to look at how he's going to do it to ensure that it is seamless and it's not going to be against the will of the Kenyans and against the Constitution.
No, you're saying it is mediocre for us to continuously think about what to eat tomorrow.
Yes, if our budget, if we are only thinking about a budget for this financial year, I think what the president has said, the 5 trillion...
Mheshimiwa, stop reversing what you said. You said mediocre thinking about what to eat tomorrow.
Yes.
Did you know that 46% of Kenyans are food poor?
I know, and I agree.
Then why shouldn't they think about what to eat tomorrow?
But I'm saying, I'm not contradicting myself. I'm saying, despite the fact that we've got this challenge, let us also think beyond this challenge. Because if we're saying this is the challenge we've got, and because we are 46% food poor, we only need to think about food and not about tomorrow, we will continually believe like that. So as much as we are thinking about tomorrow, let us think beyond tomorrow. And I think that is what the president has said. He has given a vision that nobody else has given. If you look at our previous budgets, all our previous budget is from this financial year to this financial year. Infrastructure-wise, less than 10% goes to infrastructure. But this one has just set aside a complete infrastructure development fund that is going to transform the infrastructure of this country. Let me tell you something. If all the highways are dual like he says, and you actually ask a Kenyan 2 years after if William Ruto performed or not, every Kenyan will tell you that he performed. Yesterday, I was on a taxi, and I met a driver from Thika. And he said, if I am going to be given a superhighway from Thika, no, not superhighway, but the expressway from Thika to Nairobi, I am going to vote for this president irrespective. You know, that is a Kenyan, one representing many. And so they are already starting to buy a vision.
So then, these visions, are they just for politics or real transformation of the country?
I don't think a vision is for politics, because even you just told me. Even you just told me that driver told you if William Ruto builds an expressway, he's going to vote for him.
Yes,
I have not rejected that. I have said this vision.
Sam, do you want us to continue?
No. Let me finish. Let me prosecute this and finish. Because Sam is saying I contradicted myself. I did not. The vision is something that is yet to come.
Yeah.
So this driver is saying if he is going to, that is not contradictory.
Okay.
He is going to vote for him. And he said it's going to start next year from the museum roundabout. So immediately we see the first pile of the road machinery there, then we know that the vision is coming to fruition.
So it's starting next year, 2026?
He said there are those that will be starting this December. I actually said from Mombasa, from the airport, all the way to ABC Place.
Oh. Sorry, Mheshimiwa, have you seen that, what you're saying? Have you seen it?
Of course, a vision, you do not see vision. You do not see vision in reality. You start visualizing it. And that's why every institution, including this one, have a vision.
Okay. What I'm asking is, have you seen a document explaining what you're saying?
The document is starting. The president said it yesterday, that tomorrow, which is today, is when the process starts.
All right, Franklin and Caroline.
Let me quickly chime in. Let me begin by first the issue of sympathizing with what Honorable Karoli Omondi and other first-time MPs go through because of the ranking challenges. But you see, Sam, there's an adage that Parliament functions in a committee, and the plenary is a show. And I just want to understand whether the ranking is actually extended in the committees, and whether the legislators are actually doing their actual jobs in the committees. That's number one. Number two is, as Honorable, and there's nothing I agree with the Honorable Karoli again, that as leaders, and I also take responsibility to define the vision of the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. If you're not visionary, then you're failing. So to that extent, certainly we agree with our president that, please, Mr. President, we beckon you, go on, define this vision. We need the determination to deliver it. But again, it's not true, Honorable Ote, that William Ruto, the president, is the only one, sharing this. You look at session paper number 10, what was that? Look at Vision 2030. What is that? Including the top four, or what was it? The big four. I mean, that is exactly what it is. And the problem that we're actually trying to describe here, Honorable Ote, is this loyalty is a good thing, and it's the currency in politics. But this fanaticism of jump how high is what Kenyans are actually anti. When I look at, your constituency, Kacheliba, the region has historically high levels of food poverty and low household income compared to the national average. I mean, this fanaticism and high praise singing is not basically what your legislator, your constituents elected you to come to Nairobi to do. You do your job, let Honorable William Ruto take the responsibility to define the vision, wait for it, let it come to the floor of the House, do your job. And then this obsession with constructions. That if we construct a highway or an expressway, it means development. It takes time for this concrete to become development. I mean, if you look at the mess we have in devolution, governors interpreting, the function of devolved health as, building, having brick and mortar and having so many buildings. You have so much unfinished brick and mortar and the delivery of services. What would be wrong for a governor to pick up a building that is already constructed, lease it and put in equipment and start serving patients tomorrow? Must we construct? But we know why. Politicians and government officials love this construction, because it is the conduit. It is where a lot of money is found. When you're constructing, that is where the business is happening. So we need to properly interrogate these things, Sam, and not just say jump how high. And we wish the president well. I actually love that type of President William Ruto, who wants to speak to vision. But unless we speak to the issues that Honorable Karoli Omondi is saying, that our culture, our value system is not there yet. We want to conduct a surgery on ourselves without anesthesia. It's going to be painful.
Caroline.
So the first thing is, of course, it would be nice to even audit where we are. 5 years into Vision 2030, it would have been nice to see, because Vision 2030 also has a lot of that infrastructural, brick and mortar, airports, and all these, had the 3 social pillars. It would be nice to audit how that then informs the bigger vision that the president has for the country. But having said that, I do not think that we can run away from bread and butter issues for the citizens. We started by saying that there are high levels of mistrust between citizens and their representatives. A lot of that, the inequalities that we are seeing, the lack of basic needs for citizens. Big dreams, but we still have the public debt question that we are not addressing. And so it behoves Parliament that when these proposals, this vision, this infrastructural developments come to the House, where are we getting the resources from, vis-a-vis in a country where we are also talking about spending 68% of the income paying debt? That's number one. And then number two, in terms of representation, I think it's very important that as people who represent us, to ask these tougher questions on our behalf. You cannot have members of Parliament expressing apathy and giving up, and yet, we delegated our powers and authority to them, and still expect citizens, on the other hand, get surprised when citizens, 8 million of Kenyans don't go to the vote, because if the same the House is apathetic, then what hopes do the citizens have on the other side? So it's upon the House, even as we wait to hear what the two members will say, you know, in terms of their contributions in committees, because that's one of the things we'd also like to see out there and made very public about the contributions and the discussions and the Hansards of parliamentary proceedings beyond of committee, you know, meetings, beyond the reports that we get and we are able to analyze. But allow me to say that even the good book in Habakkuk talk says, write your vision down. But once that vision is written down, we need to see it, we need to interrogate it, we need to find out how it's going to be resourced. We need to break down the numbers into, you know, the impact on the citizens, how it addresses the current issues of jobs and inequality and all these things. And Parliament has a very big role to play, because for that vision to be realized, the resources will be required, and Parliament needs to say, as the holder of the purse, the power of the purse rests with Parliament.
So what precedes the other? Is it the written document or the decision to accept the vision?
He has to accept the vision from what he's reading. So you can't accept what you've not seen.
Okay. Now we're coming to the tail end of the conversation. But Mheshimiwa Karoli then, because a lot of work is just about to begin to be done. And I'm just wondering, because he says he has already accepted the vision, but when you look at even the funding of the, let's say, the National Infrastructure Fund, that it will be processed from privatization. So far, the only active matters in terms of a bit of action is Kenya Pipeline and Safaricom, which Safaricom is not necessarily privatization but divestiture. You look at the laws that we have, none would feed into the infrastructure fund or the sovereign wealth fund unless amendments are brought on board or new laws are brought on board. How then do we walk through that rope with Parliament as currently constituted?
We will wait for those proposals to be brought to the House. We will look at them. We will do our best to question them and to debate them. But there's another fundamental problem with the direction we are taking. If you look at India, China, Vietnam, Korea, the countries that made a great leap in terms of development, they did not start by building superhighways. They started by ensuring food security. Food security. So all this talk, all this money we are putting in all these funds, our first priority should, how do we make our country food secure? So, you know, there's a lot of money, I mean, but if you look at the projects, like there's a big one, Koru Soina Dam, 25 billion. It doesn't feature anywhere. We are talking of yet another expressway from Museum Hill. There's already an expressway from Museum Hill, unless we don't live in Nairobi. Isn't there one?
Well, it goes a different direction towards...
So I don't know where...
Road.
No, there's an expressway from Museum Hill. You go down to Parklands, and then you get onto Wangari Maathai Road, onto Murang'a Road. There is. Unless you're going to build at that level.
It was part of the old superhighway.
Yeah. It was done less than 15 years ago, so it's not old. Yes.
I don't know how it will be put.
You see, what we should focus on, China first fed its people. Then they started talking about building roads, generating power. India did the same. That's the greatest legacy of Indira Gandhi. Kenya should first focus on feeding its people. Our people are malnourished. Over 50% don't have even one square meal a day. They don't. So that should be our priority. Anyway, that is what I can say about that. But because we are running out of time and Franklin is here. Franklin, we need your help. The problem are our political parties. And you are the head, you are the executive of all political parties. I would like to challenge you. Help us reform our political parties by reforming the Political Parties Act. Number one, the funding allocated to political parties is excessive in a country that is developing. It is 0.3% of what? Our last audited revenue. So if we are a trillion, what percentage is that to give to private members' clubs? And I've always said political parties are no different from Gor Mahia Football Club. There's nothing special about them. We can't allocate that sort of resource envelope to political parties. So please let us have an honest conversation and reduce it. My own political party, ODM, is claiming 12 billion from the exchequer as political party funding. It is criminal. So let us go and review the Political Parties Act. Let us also agree.
You mean ODM does not need 12 billion shillings?
Why would you give a political party 12 billion when university students have no accommodation, when there's no capitation for schools? Just ask yourself, where are our priorities? So you can imagine what Jubilee is claiming is, if ODM is claiming 12 billion,
right.
Jubilee, URP, UDA, they must be claiming 30 billion. Let us start funding independent candidates using the Political Parties Act. Let us fund them. Independent candidates. They are also candidates. That multi-party does not mean a registered political party. It means different pathways to elective office. And finally, let us change the Political Parties Act to remove barriers to registration of new political parties. There is no reason insisting a party must have a face of Kenya by having offices in 24 counties. A political party can deal with one issue in an election. The interest of Omena fishermen. If it becomes an issue, and we want it articulated in that election, we can register an Omena party to deal with that issue only in that election. There's nothing so special about these barriers we've built. So I'm challenging you, help us unlock this, and we free Kenyans from capture of useless political parties, capture of incompetent executive. Let Kenyans be free to elect competent people into offices, and you'll see how this country will go far.
All right. Yes. Now, I want us to close by looking at the feedback that has come to us at Citizen TV Kenya. As Sam Gituku, the hashtag to use the Citizen Daybreak on X. Frank Orinde is saying the Parliament's 2025 scorecard is a sobering read. More noise than oversight, more politics than people and accountability thinning out as public trust erodes. Kenya deserves a parliament that legislates, oversees and represents, not one that merely survives headlines. Sir Nixon Dugire, when a parliament is compromised, the consequences can be severe. Corruption, impunity, collusion, etc. can all take root, and the public's trust in the institution can be irreparably damaged. We therefore wait for the 14th parliament. Okay. Engineer Lazaro, 2025 parliament can only be compared to a choir team of praise and worship where members sing praises in different tones, soprano, bass and alto. Sycophants degraded the quality of debate and replaced it with the executive rubble stamp. Babu Michael, I totally want to differ with Honorable Lotte and anyone with the opinion that electorate are to blame for parliament's failure. Remember during the Finance Bill 2024 when the president openly threatened MPs who could oppose the bill, that was unacceptable. And finally, Leonard Masika, you're saying that Kenya's problem has never been plans. It's widening gap between promises and reality. We can borrow Asian miracle while ignoring the foundation that made it: rule of law, zero corruption. Till we rebuild these fundamentals, comparing us to Asian tigers is nothing more than political poetry. Mheshimiwa Lotte, you elected on a KUP party, which was in Azimio, but shortly after, you crossed over and joined the work of the government. I don't know if that was...
That was good. We are actually in a grand coalition.
Grand coalition?
We are already seeing that we are thinking together, so we're working together.
Working together.
So our vision is
the members of Kacheliba elected you because you were in Azimio,
they elected Lotte.
But and Lotte moved.
Yeah, and that is what I've been agitating. Please elect members that you believe.
They elected Lotte, who shifted allegiance. But you're now telling them I
consulted the party leadership. I consulted the electorate on the side. It's good to work with government.
Okay, all right. We have no evidence of that consultation. But thank you so much, Titus Lotte from Kacheliba, Mheshimiwa Karoli Omondi from Suba South, Caroline Gaita from Mzalendo, and Franklin Mukwanja from the Center for Multi-Party Democracy. That's our time looking at Parliament in 2025. Tomorrow we take stock of the human rights in 2025. What you think has been done. You can start by sharing your feedback with us on our different platforms. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again some other time.